Amber of the Little Reeser House, where we constantly seek out and celebrate the joy found in the little things. Today, I'm going to show you how I painted. Yes, I said painted these secondhand chairs to look like beautiful leather accent chairs. And my mind is still blown that this actually worked. If you like a good DIY and home project, make sure you subscribe right there down below so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, because that is exactly what I like to share on this channel. Now, let's get to it. Before I begin, I want to say that I was originally introduced to this DIY possibility from DIY Danie, an incredibly talented YouTube DIYer. The moment I saw her painted upholstery project, I knew I would be doing this on some piece of furniture. I followed her tutorial as a guide, so make sure you definitely check out her video. The first thing I did was find myself some upholstered chairs. I found this set of 2 matching chairs on my local buy and sell for a bargain at $20 each. These chairs give me some serious standard 2010 chain hotel vibes, but I liked the general shape and the small profile. I was also a little skeptical about this project working out, so I decided to keep the investment pretty low. One thing to note is that my chairs not only had a crazy colored pattern, but it was actually in the weave of the fabric as well. So some of the stitching was raised, and just note that if you do a similar project, paint does not hide varying texture. In my case, I thought the texture pattern could either totally ruin the final look or make it look kind of cool, so I decided to forge ahead anyways. I checked to see if the chair legs could be removed, as I would be sanding and finishing them later. Mine couldn't separate, but if yours can, I strongly recommend that you do that. I took a vacuum to my chairs to clean off any debris, and then I got to mixing my paint. For this project, you'll need to paint your chairs using chalk paint, my trusty friend. As I mentioned, I followed DIY Danie's tutorial, and she used this exact combination of Annie Sloan chalk paint colors, and that was the same color I was going for with my own chair, so I followed suit. Essentially, you need to mix equal parts of the colors Arles, Barcelona Orange, and Honfleur if you want to go for a similar tone. Otherwise, you can get creative with your color choices. I had no context for how much paint I would need, so I started with the sample sizes, making about 1.5 cups total of paint when mixed together, and that got me about 2.5 coats in on one chair. Other than the paint, you will also need the Annie Sloan chalk paint wax in both a clear and a dark finish, plus a paintbrush and a container to mix your paint in. I got my Annie Sloan paint from a really cute local store called the Lemonade Stand, but they actually also sell online and ship their products, so I'll link them down below for you to check them out. I started by dampening my upholstery with water after watching a few other painted upholstery videos, but I don't actually think this was necessary. Instead, I proceeded by dipping my brush in water and then the paint and spreading it from there. The idea of this technique is that instead of applying paint to sit on the surface of the fabric, you are essentially dyeing it by adding water to the paint so it soaks in. This means that you have to apply multiple layers of thinner, watered-down paint to build up the pigmentation. I started in one area and worked my way around following this basic technique. Okay, first coat is on. For sake of comparison, I'll show you the original chair to the left. These red circles are going to be the death of me. They're very textured and they don't absorb the color very well, but I'm hoping just more coats will help. Generally, I'm feeling very skeptical, but committed. So we're gonna keep going. I think what I'm gonna do is just only do this chair first and make sure it works, and then maybe do the other if it works, because it does take a fair amount of paint and it's a time commitment, so. I let the first coat dry completely before proceeding with the next. With each consecutive coat, it slowly began to cover more of the fabric. It felt daunting to stick it out, and I was skeptical of the red tones of the raised texture in my chair, but you really do just have to trust the process and continue to do watered down coats of paint. If you put it on too thick, it will crack once it dries. I am 3 coats in. I had to break and go get some more paint. I'm going to do a 4th coat. The red spots on the chair are still just really showing through, so I'm hoping I can get by with doing 1 more coat and then maybe just some touch-ups over those red areas, but I'll show you where we're at. I have done 4 coats plus a 5th coat just over some of those red spots to see if I could fill them in a little bit. And I don't know, when I look at it, I can still feel like I see the dots. I can't tell if it's because of the texture of the dots or if there's still a little bit of that saturated color coming through. But I am going to do one last stitch effort, 1 more coat. This will be the 5th coat of paint. And then I'm gonna go from there and just hope I can do the wax and finish this chair up and see if it worked out. At this point, the chair was covered and ready for the wax, but I knew I wanted to do something with the legs, so I opted to sand them down before applying the wax. I had no idea whether these legs would sand up, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to stain them or paint them, so I just opted to sand them so I would have the option. In retrospect, I should have done this before starting the painting, but you live and you learn, so do what I say and not what I do. I ended up sanding a bit of the fabric in the process to be able to get to all of the legs, so I just went in and touched up a few areas again with the paint once I was done. After all the coats of paint had dried, the fabric definitely felt a little crispy. It wouldn't crack, but it was stiff. This waxing step is really where the magic happens, so using the Annie Sloan Clear Wax, a clean brush, and a pair of gloves, I went in and applied a layer of wax to the entire painted surface and used my hand to smooth it in. It seems so simple, but it was amazing how this totally transformed the chair. The wax was the magic sauce that gave it the buttery leather texture. So after allowing it to dry, I did a 2nd clear coat before coming in with the dark wax to add some definition. With the dark wax, I used a clean, lint-free cloth to buff it out shortly after applying it. It gave me a little more control and ensured the dark wax was applied sparingly. I went in and mostly did the edges for some added definition and to make it look a little bit more worn in, but this step is optional. It made my chair feel a little bit more rustic because of the texture, so if you want a really clean, sleek look, maybe stick with just the clear coat. One thing to note is that, like mine, if you do have some texture on your fabric and you don't like it, the dark wax will draw more definition to it. You may choose to skip this if you'd rather hide the texture. I continued to work and buff out some of the areas with my cloth as I went along. I went back and forth about whether to stain or paint the legs, but ultimately decided that the chair already felt a little rustic, and so staining the wood would only add to that. I opted for a clean matte black paint instead. I used this Fusion Minerals paint that I picked up from another local store, but you could probably get away with any type of paint you want to use. Watching that paint go on so smoothly was so satisfying. I could hardly believe it, but this technique totally worked. The wax made the previously crusty painted upholstery feel soft and smooth, and the color tones and textures were rich and warm. The process took some time and patience, but for a fraction of the cost, I had a beautiful leather-looking chair using paint. The only problem is that now I needed to repeat the whole process. I want to thank you for watching today's video, and if you have any questions about the process or the products I use, make sure you leave them down below in the comments. I also would love to know if you would ever try something like this. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit that subscribe button because I have so many more projects lined up in my garage just waiting for me to tackle them. And you can bet that I will definitely be sharing all about it. And remember that the best things in life are often the little things. Like the satisfaction of turning an old chair into something beautiful and new. Bye, friends.